Hello everybody, my name is ProfesorRich and we're here to learn some English. Today we are continuing our series on philosophy. We're going to talk about philosophy for English learners, that is philosophy for English learners, speakers of other languages. And today we are talking about the philosophy of knowledge. Last week, we looked at the philosophy of beauty, called aesthetics. Then on Saturday, we looked at the philosophy of morality, or what is good, and that's called ethics. And today we are doing the philosophy of knowledge. And what's that called? So today we will be looking at what is knowledge. We'll be talking about justification, belief, and truth. And we will then ask the question, what is truth? Because as we'll see today, the idea of knowledge is connected quite heavily to the idea of truth. In fact, we think that knowledge and truth have an important connection or relationship. So what's this area of philosophy called? Does anybody know in the chat? What is the name of the philosophy of knowledge? Do you study philosophy, Sleepwalker? The name is Epistemology. Epistemology. So we have another lovely word from the Greeks. We know this is a Greek word for a few reasons, but certainly because we can see common Greek graphemes or affixes. In other words, we can see parts of the word which come from ancient Greek. They are epi, stem, and ology. And we can talk about what they mean. So let's have a look at that. By the way, pronunciation, epistemology. Epistemology. We've got the mol here, molar. Epistemology. So match the parts of the word to the meanings. Match the parts of the word to the meanings. Epi, stem, and ology. Quick little task for you here, chat, to get us going today. And I'll take this moment to say hello to you folks in the chat. Hello to Sleepwalker. Hello, Mina. Hello, Julia. Hello, Manjula. How are you doing? Hello, NBTD. Hello to Dreamer. Hello, Anawat. How are you doing? I'm good. Hello, Pure Care. And hello to Mujahid Kalo, who says, hi, my colleagues, teacher, your colleague. Fantastic. Who's your colleague? And hello to Elena. Hello to Sonia. One A, 2B, 3C, really? Oh, no. You're right. You're right. Oh, dear me, Rich. I didn't mean to do that. I'm pretty sure that I changed it, but maybe I changed it back afterwards. So, yes, we have a 1A, a 2B, and 3C. So we put that together and we have on standing, the study of. If we break that down a bit, we could say it's the study of standing upon, or the study of foundations. Foundations is the base, what we stand upon. For example, the floor. Or, for example, if you build a house, you need to build the foundation first. So what is the house upon? What do we stand upon? Of course, what it means is the study of knowledge. It's the philosophy of knowledge. We are concerned with what is knowledge. And the Greeks called this the study of standing upon. I thought that was quite nice. Epi, on, stem, standing, and ology, the study of. Can be quite interesting to look at these little parts of words, can't it? So, I have a question for you, everybody. Are you ready? This is a question about food, and it's a question about your fridge. How well do you know your fridge? I want answers in the chat. What have you got for me? How well do you know your fridge? What food is there in your fridge? Don't look. Don't look. I want you to tell me now in the chat. Do you know what's in your fridge? I'll do it as well. I'll type my answer in the chat. So there's half a bottle of milk, 100 grams of cheese, 2 kilograms of chicken legs, and I think there are about 3 cloves of garlic. And I think there is some butter left. I think there is some butter left. Pure Care is not using a refrigerator. That's also very interesting. So, there's some things that I know and some things that I think. I know that there is some milk. I am certain there is some milk. And it is true that there is some milk. But I don't know how many cloves of garlic I have. How many bulbs, in fact, bulbs of garlic. I believe I have 3. So, here we have an interesting question. What is the difference with I know and I think? What is the difference between a belief and knowing? So if you think about your situation, do you believe there is milk or do you know there is milk? Do you know how much milk? Do you believe there is half a bottle or do you know there's half a bottle? What is the difference? What's the difference between knowing and believing? I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to get your thoughts together about this. Let me know what you think. What is the difference between knowing and believing? When you know, there is no place for doubt. So with know, we have no doubt. That's an interesting thing to say. We can talk about that. With knowing there is no doubt. Seeing is believing, says MBTD English. Right, but I don't need to see my fridge. I know that I have milk. I know I have milk. I know I have milk. I don't need to see it. Anawat says knowing is what you have information about. Information plays a part, but actually I have some information about my fridge. I have some information. I have the information that I bought 5 bulbs of garlic and I used about 2. But I'm still not sure that there are 3 bulbs left. I think there are. But I wouldn't bet money on it. It's an assumption. So, I think it's quite easy for us to talk about what a belief is. Sleepwalker has an interesting answer. So Sleepwalker says, knowing is based on reasonable thoughts and logic. Belief is based on our personal perception. So that's actually quite an extreme view, Sleepwalker. In philosophical terms, this would make you an extreme rationalist. Which means that for your statement to be true, you're saying that truth and knowledge comes from logic, not from experience. Because, of course, with experience, it must come through our personal perception. We cannot have experience without perception. So if knowledge comes from logic, not from experience, then the things that we can know are quite limited. For example, by Sleepwalker's definition, I cannot know that I have a coffee in my hand. I have the experience of a coffee in my hand. I remember making it. I can taste it. But I don't know because I'm relying on my perception. Experience is perception. So, where we go with this is, with belief, we can talk about our perspective, our opinion, but knowledge must contain some other elements. Knowledge, in fact, is more than just belief. In order to understand knowledge, we need to understand these things. We need to understand justification, belief, and truth. So here's a little matching task for you. Justification, belief, and truth. ABC. Match the words to the definitions. I'll say them again. Justification, belief, truth. And we have having an opinion about something, having good reasons for something you think, and how things really are. Yes, Mujahid, you are correct. I didn't mix them. But this time, You're not correct. I assume that you're doing the old one. So, Anoette, 1B, 2A, and 3C. That is correct. Well done with the first correct answer. So, justification is having good reasons for something. Belief, having an opinion. And then truth is how things really are. Just look at that again and really take it in, because understanding these three things is critical for understanding what comes next. So we have three elements. The truth, which is really how things are, independent of a person. So the truth is, a tree falls in the forest, and even if there are no people, the tree falls in the forest. It's truth. Then we have belief. Belief is all about people. All about people. To have a belief, I need to be a subject, an agent, or a person. And I make an opinion. I believe that something is true. Now, if I believe something is true and it is true, that is still not knowledge. Knowledge also requires justification. So I need to have a belief. The belief must be true, and I must have justification for my belief. Then I have knowledge. So here we can see a little diagram I made about this. So knowledge in the middle. In order to have knowledge, we must have justification. The belief must be true, and we must justify it. So I'll give you some examples of this. There's some examples when we miss one of these areas. I always want to draw on Google Docs, but it never works. Let's try this. Use the old Union Jack. Okay, so let's consider the situation that we have a true belief, but no justification. So I believe something, and it's true, but I have no reason to tell you why I believe it. I believe it, and it's true, but I have no reason. That's not knowledge. That's like a lucky belief, right? It's like, I believe there are 3 oranges in the fridge. Why? I don't know. I have no memory of 3 oranges in the fridge. I have no reason to tell you why, but I believe it. And then we check, and there are 3 oranges. That's like a lucky guess, a lucky belief. Okay? So we need justification. Now, what if we have justification and belief, but it's not true? This is very possible. Okay? This is where you believe something, you have good reasons for it, but it's not true. And this can imply a few things. It can, for example, it can show us that our justification has a problem, that there is some problem with our justification. It could show us that there's something wrong with our theory of the world. It could show us that there's something wrong with our science. If we find that we have a belief and we believe and we see the belief is well justified, but it's not true. And then finally, we could have justification and truth. So a justified truth, but we don't believe it. And this is very interesting as well. This would be like a truth that we ignore. So it's a truth that has good reasons to believe it, but we ignore the truth. So it's like an unacknowledged truth, a truth that we are ignoring. That is not knowledge because we don't believe it. It's like we are living in ignorance, even though there is a truth and we have justification. So to have knowledge, we need all three. We need truth, justification, and belief. Welcome to Epistemology. So let's have a look at some of these words and have a look at the different word forms in English. We've got a nice little word form table here, and we are looking at truth or truths, justification and belief. I'd like you to tell me the verb form, adjective and adverb form of these words. You can type your answers in the chat. And Pallavi says, why are you doing these philosophy topics, Rich? Just asking. We're doing a little series on philosophy, Pallavi, for a bit of fun. People have found them quite interesting. I am qualified in philosophy, so I'm giving you a little philosophy 101, the basics of philosophy. We'll go through a few more after epistemology. I think they are a good opportunity to strengthen your English muscles. So you can push yourself a little bit with your English by looking at a topic like this, which is outside of many people's area of study or outside of many people's context. It is very difficult to understand, Pallavi, I have to admit. I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, but they are very difficult topics to understand, especially epistemology. It is difficult to understand epistemology. The first time I studied epistemology, I didn't understand it at all, actually. I studied it when I was 18 at university, and I really, really strongly disliked my course on epistemology. I didn't understand it at all. So don't worry if you don't understand it, Pallavi, that's okay. Just do what you can. Focus on the pronunciation and perhaps have a look here at the different forms of these words. Do you know what these words mean? And Mina said, what a great explanation. Thank you, Mina. Do you have a background in philosophy? The basic idea here, Pallavi, is we have an opinion or a belief, and then we have the truth. And if we have a belief that is true, then that's a good guess, but it's not knowledge. To be knowledge, we also need justification, because otherwise we're just guessing, because a belief is like a guess. Right? Without justification, a belief is like a guess. It's like, I think there are 10 oranges in the basket. Why do you think that? I don't know. I have no justification. But I think it. So a belief without justification is not knowledge. For knowledge, we need justification. Justification can be, well, I went to the shops, I bought 12 oranges. I have a memory of doing that. So I know that I bought 12 oranges, and I know that I ate one and my wife ate one. So now I have a belief that we have 10 oranges, and I can justify that belief with my memory of buying the oranges and my memory of eating one and my wife eating one. And when I check the oranges, if I see that there really are 10 oranges, then I can go, okay, there are 10 oranges. I have justification. I believe it. Then I know that there are 10 oranges. Mina said, I studied small parts of philosophy in my degree. Alrighty. Okay, so let's have a look at truth or truths as a plural. So there is no verb for truths. The adjective is true. The adverb is truly. Obviously, truly has a bit of a weird meaning, right? We can say, this is a truth. This thing is true. They mean the same. But then with truly, we use that a bit differently, really. We might say, like, this is a truly great movie. Now, when I say that, this is a truly great movie, actually what I mean is this is a really great movie. So truly, in fact, just means like really. So it doesn't have the same meaning as true and truth. Although we have the form truly, it really doesn't have the same meaning. It truly doesn't have the same meaning as true and truth. Then we have justification. The verb is justify. And the adjective, there are two adjectives. So with justification and belief, for the adjective, we have an ed and an ing form. So with justify, we've got justified. And we have justifying. I'm trying to think of an example of how to use the word justifying as an adjective. It's not easy. A justifying argument. It's not very common. So we're going to make that a bit grey. Not very common to use justifying as an adjective, but it does exist. Then we've got justified, like a justified belief. A justified truth, that is a truth which we can justify. And finally, the adverb is justifiably. 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 He justifiably called it knowledge. He justifiably stated the truth. Justifiably, which means we have been able to justify it. And then we've got belief. The verb is believe. Notice the pronunciation difference. The adjective believed and believing. Again, we don't use the ing form very much there. Believing. Like he is a very believing person. Meaning someone who believes things easily. Maybe too easily. And then believed. Which we can use for a proposition or a truth or a belief. This belief is believed. We can also use it for a person to say that we believe what they are saying. They are believed because people believe them. And we've got believably, which means you do something in a way that people can believe it. Probably a bit more common than believably is to say unbelievably. When someone does something that you just can't believe. We also use unbelievably quite a lot with adjectives in combinations. Like we could say she is unbelievably intelligent, which means a lot. All right, so there's our answers for the word forms there. Does anyone have any questions about that? Can I use verify to replace justify, says Ashley Chen. No. Well, yes. Let me think about it. Verify is when you are checking to see if something is true, but justify is when you are providing evidence to show that it's true. So justify is provide evidence, provide proof or evidence to show something is true. And verify is search for proof or evidence to determine if something is true. So you can't use them exactly interchangeably, Ashley. What about believable? Oh, thank you, Sleepwalker. That's a good one, isn't it? Yeah, believable. And unbelievable. Brilliant. I like it. Fits better with the adverb as well, doesn't it? Yes, Palafi, I did like philosophy, actually. I didn't understand it, though. I have to be honest. I understand it better now. But when I studied philosophy, I didn't really understand it. And hello there, Pavia. Nice of you to pop in. Imagination is more important than knowledge. What do you think about this quote by Einstein, says Ghanit. So I think that there are lots of quotes by Einstein which we don't know if they're real quotes or not, for one. So we have to be careful talking about quotes by Einstein. Secondly, yeah, I don't think that Einstein would say that exactly. He might say something similar though, but not that. The problem is that people often think they know things that are not true. So we often lean on our knowledge. We think, yes, I know these things, but then we realize they are not true. And when we have a belief and we find it's not true, then often we need to look at our justification. And we find there's a problem with our justification. And Funder Tunk says, "Hi, ProfRich. I am new here. Hello, Funder. How are you doing? You're joining us in quite a heavy topic. Do you like philosophy? We're doing philosophy today. All right, folks. So, little bit of pronunciation. Some pronunciation which you might know, and some which you might not. So I've got words there on the left and words on the right. I'll read the pronunciation of the words on the left, and I want you to try and say the words on the right, and then compare them to my pronunciation. Are you ready? So on the left we have truth. And then we have justification. And finally, belief. So now, having to think about that, how do you say these words on the right? You can try this at home. If you are able to speak out loud, you can try to say them out loud right now. Enrique says, I'm so happy to hearing from you. Hello there, Enrique. How are you doing? So I'm going to show you these ones on the right now. We have this one. Notice there's quite a big difference. At the end, quite a big difference. So truth becomes truths. Truths. All right. And then this one. Justify. Justify. And finally, a little bit of a difference at the end here as well, with f turning to v. Believe. All right, so some questions for you folks. What determines your beliefs? What determines your beliefs? How do you make a belief? What do you believe and what informs your belief? So this really is the question that Sleepwalker was answering before when they talked about not trusting perception but trusting logic. That is something we can talk about in terms of determining your belief. You can say, well, my beliefs are shaped by logic rather than perception. Why do you believe the things that you believe? We're going to talk about 3 models of truth based on different ways of deciding what to believe. Some other questions here. How do you justify the things you believe? And how do you know they are true? So, anyone want to comment about this in the chat before we move on to the next section today? You can answer any of these questions and I will comment on it as I pour myself another coffee. And by the way, I have to tell you that coffee, especially strong coffee, goes hand in hand with philosophy. Philosophy goes hand in hand with coffee. Sleepwalker says, my beliefs are based on knowledge and experiences. Hang on a minute, your beliefs are based on knowledge? So one of the things we're going to talk about in a minute, Sleepwalker, is the idea that truth is something that fits the things we already know to be true. So when you say, my beliefs are based on knowledge, I think you're saying that the new things that you think are true are things that fit with the old things that you know are true. Is that right? Now Julia says, my beliefs depend on my gut feelings. Intuition. And Pallavi says, by seeing evidence. So you see how the world is, and you use that to verify the truth of your belief. All right, so we're going to look at 3 theories of truth. So what is truth? How do we know what is true? That's really the big issue here. That's what knowledge is all about. That's what belief is all about. What's the point in belief if it's not true? The whole idea here is a search for truth. If it's not a search for truth, then there is no meaning at all to our beliefs. It's all just whatever. So we must be concerned with what is true. So, what is true? Okay, theory number 1 is called correspondence. So correspondence is a word which means something like relationship or connection. And the truth theory of correspondence basically says that truths match the world. This is basically what Pallavi just said, that you see things are true in the world, and with that you can say they are true. I know it seems a bit like it's going in circles, like this is true, therefore it is really true. But that really is the theory of correspondence. That's how it works. So we can have something like the sea is water. This is a belief. It's knowledge. The sea is water. And this is true because the sea really is water. So it's that simple with correspondence. We believe the sea is water, and it's true because the sea really is water. And this is the idea that truth corresponds to actual truth in the real world. The correspondence theory. It's a little bit circular, I have to say, and I do have some problems with it at a logical level, but it's quite simple. It's quite simple. It's like we can say, look, cats have 4 legs. How do I know that's true? Well, because cats really do have 4 legs. That's how I know it's true. That's the correspondence theory. Okay, next, we've got coherence. So this one, coherence is an interesting term. We often use the term coherence talking about speaking English in speaking exams. We often talk about your coherence. This is one of the things that the examiner looks for in a speaking exam. They look for coherence. And coherence means how everything is fitting together and making sense together. Coherence. So the truth theory of coherence basically is that truths match other truths. So we have some truths already, right? We know that all triangles have 3 sides. We know that, right? So when I see something with 5 sides, a new thing, What is this thing with 5 sides? Well, what I know is this thing with 5 sides is not a triangle. And I know that because triangles have 3 sides. So now I have another truth about the world. I have a truth that this 5-sided thing is not a triangle. And that fits with my other truths about the world. An example here is something like, nothing can travel faster than light. How do we know that that's true? Well, it's true because it fits with all of our scientific theories. And actually, if there is something faster than light, then that means there's a problem with our scientific theories. Since we accept that our scientific theories are true, then we know that it is also true that nothing can travel faster than light. This theory also has similar problems to the previous one. So the coherence theory does have similar problems to the correspondence theory. It's a little bit circular because that means we're adding truths that fit our truths, which means we're just adding things that fit. But you know, science really does this a lot, actually. We add things that fit, especially in physics at the moment, subatomic physics. A lot of our current scientific knowledge of subatomic theory, subatomic physics, is based on ideas that just fit. We don't have any other proof. We just have theories that fit. And so we say, well, that's true, right? Like, for example, wave-particle duality. We can't actually see wave-particle duality happen. We can't experience it. It just fits. So therefore, we say that certain particles under certain circumstances can behave like a wave or like a particle. It just fits. It fits the other truths that we have. So that's coherence. And Pachu says, what are we talking about? Yeah, good point, Pachu. If you come into this halfway through, a good luck. All right, moving on. This is our last theory of truth. And this one's called pragmatism. Now, I think a lot of you will like this, especially if you are not so philosophically minded. If you're just like, look, I just want to get through life, okay? I just want to get through life. I don't want to talk about coherence and correspondence because they are complicated words and complicated theories. So pragmatism is very simple. It's that truths are useful. So with pragmatism, we say something is true if believing it's true is useful, right? For example, I think it's true that hot water will burn my finger, right? So that truth is useful because it means I don't put my finger in my boiling hot coffee. Because if I did put my finger in my boiling hot coffee, I'd burn my finger and it'd hurt, right? So it's quite useful. That's a useful truth. So we can say it is true that boiling hot coffee will burn your finger. And I don't care about observations and rationality, whatever. That stuff can be useful, sure, but it's not important for me when I say that something is true. I will simply say it's true if it's useful for getting through the world. And this is the pragmatist theory, the pragmatism theory of truth. So a similar example there to the one I just give, which is it's harmful to put your hand in fire. This is true because it's useful for us to live our life acting as if this were true. It's useful because if you think this is false, then you may do something in your life which is not useful, such as burn your hand. And that's not very useful. So I quite like the pragmatist theory of truth as well, especially as someone who is very philosophical in general, but I can really appreciate pragmatism actually for the utility that it has. And that brings us to the end of our lecture today. So I'd like to have a bit of reflection here, everybody. I want to know, what did you find most interesting today? And what questions do you have about truth, justification, or belief? You can type those in the chat now, and I'll do my best to answer them. We can check it easily ourselves by touching the fire, right? We can, Sleepwalker, but to say that it's true, we actually don't need to do that. So with the pragmatist theory, we don't necessarily need to check the truth of something by doing it. We simply say, if it's useful, then it's true. It's that simple. So actually having to check it might cause problems. So maybe I actually don't check it. You know? This is the pragmatic theory. Pachu says, how can knowledge of philosophy be useful for speaking English? Well, there's a number of things we can say about that, Pachu. First of all, when we're speaking English, obviously we're always going to have some other context. Unless we're speaking English about speaking English, which we can do, but that's what 99% of YouTube channels about English learning do already, which is they talk about English using English. What we can also do is we can talk about other subjects using English, and we can learn English in that way. This is sometimes called content language integrated learning, or CLIL. And it basically means we learn about an interesting subject like philosophy, maths, psychology, history, whatever, and we do that using the medium of English. And by doing so, we'll learn something new, and also we get an authentic experience of listening to English, thinking about English, and communicating in English by using the chat. Mina says, what about invisible things? How do we define that kind of thing in philosophy, says Mina. When you say invisible things, Mina, do you mean things, do you mean metaphysical things? Do you mean metaphysics? If so, the answer is metaphysics. Metaphysics. Metaphysics means things like time, identity, change, happiness, cause and effect, etc. Not so much happiness, actually, because happiness is kind of a more real thing. But if we isolate happiness from the human and we say, what is happiness in isolation, then it becomes metaphysics. Yeah, it's metaphysics. You might also call it abstract concepts. So philosophy, to answer your question, Mina, philosophy loves to talk about abstract concepts, especially these days. Because if we go back to ancient Greece, when Plato and Aristotle and Socrates were really having a party and having loads of fun, and they were getting all of the girls, and with their amazing philosophy, it was great party time. Back then, philosophy was kind of like science. It was the science of the day. But now we have science, and we have engineering, and we have all these other different scientific areas, even psychology and sociology. And because of that, philosophy has a different focus in the modern day. And actually, metaphysics and abstract concepts are one of the things that philosophy still has a big interest in. So they're one of the areas that's still very big in philosophy, particularly ethics. We talked about ethics last class. So ethics is a big area of philosophy now, big area of modern philosophy. And a lot of very important legal lawmakers and lawyers who work like for the United Nations and so on, and they're involved in very big decisions about ethics. They have a background in philosophy because philosophy is really into ethics, for example, and other abstract areas. Like, what is art? That's philosophy. Why do people like horror movies? Why do people like being afraid? Is fear intrinsically negative? It can't be, because some people like it, etc., etc. And Pallavi says they were focusing on discovering things, not getting girls. I know, that was just a joke, Pallavi. Actually, there's some evidence to suggest that they were more interested in getting boys. But that's a discussion for another time. Pachu says, oh my God, your answer's very useful. I'm searching this answer over years. No one communicated well. That's interesting, Pachu. It's interesting that no one communicated that. So, honestly, I'll tell you a bit more about that. Right? So, the rationale of, why do we learn about other things when we study English, for example? We can examine that in detail. But the primary rationale is to do with... It's to do with how things are learned. It's to do with how things are learned. So the reason is actually engagement, interest, right? But we can also ask, well, why is engagement and interest important? Like, why do I need to talk about philosophy? Why don't I just talk about the present perfect? Well, it's because if I just talk about present perfect, there's something missing there. Like, it's not interesting and it's not real communication. And then you think, well, why is it important for things to be interesting and for us to have real communication? And the reason is because communication with interest, etc., fulfills many of the characteristics of learning. So, in other words, for learning to take place, we need certain things to happen. And when we communicate and you understand and you are interested, then those characteristics happen, which means if we communicate effectively, you learn. Therefore, if we want to learn English, all we need to do is to communicate effectively, right? So, what is effective communication? Well, it's interesting, it's engaging, it's using a level of language that you can understand, but also is a bit challenging, so you're learning stuff. I want you to be interested. I want you to feel like we're having a conversation, etc., etc. Some philosophy changes from one generation to the other. Yeah, it does, Abbo. But also we have these timeless problems as well, don't we? Culture is also very interesting, Sleepwalker. Can you give examples on that, teacher, from your previous slide? What do you mean? Examples of what? Of what, sorry? Of this? What do you mean, Pallavi? Do you mean examples of what questions do you have, or do you mean examples of this? I need to know specifically what you'd like an example of. Mina, you're trying to catch me out. It's my accent. That's what you're noticing. Okay. So the RP pronunciation is lucky and luck with the lucky, luck. However, you will hear me say it as lucky and look. That's because I have a Northern English accent. Sleepwalker, that's a really weird question because the antonym means the opposite, and you said the opposite of epistemology. Well, as we know, epistemology means the study of what is knowledge, or the study of foundations. So, what is the opposite of the study of what is knowledge? The study of what is ignorance, maybe? So, I actually don't know what we call... What do we call the study of what is ignorance? Agnotology. I've never heard of that. Agnotology. Within the sociology of knowledge, agnotology is the study of deliberate ignorance. So that's a possibility for you. I've never heard that word before. That's a possibility. We might say it's agnotology. Look, Google Docs says it doesn't even exist as a word. Oh, no, it's because of that. Okay. Agnotology. The study of what is, or the study of ignorance, let's just say. That's one possibility. We could also say that instead of the study, it's like the unlearning of knowledge, or the unlearning of, not the study. What's the opposite of study? Yeah, it's ignorance. The ignorance of knowledge. Let's just go for agnotology, okay? Yeah, so in general, I'll just go over this quickly because it does come up and people do mention it quite a bit about that pronunciation difference because it's so noticeable, isn't it? And it happens a lot. And it's very common, actually, for people to say it in these other ways. So yeah, in general, with Northern English, we say whenever the Southerners say Now, I actually do both because I'm an English teacher and that's what happens. Also, I haven't lived in the north of England for 22 years. So actually, it's kind of surprising that I still say it at all. But yeah, they do. So in Northern English, they will say must instead of must. They'll say but instead of but. Other instead of other. Brother instead of brother, etc. Now, people from the south, they still use for words like look. So actually, both of them will say look like that. It doesn't exist with using the It'll be look. So there's certain circumstances when they do use that. I want you to show some questions we can make about truth, beliefs, or justification. Yeah, you can say, how do I justify my beliefs? That could be a question. Or you might say, can we have a justified belief which isn't true? Can you give an example? Okay, things like that. Southern English is Standard English. Kind of. Yeah. Kind of. So Standard English is RP. And RP is from the South. But there are some differences between general Southern English and RP. For example, in RP and in Northern English, we say mouth, like this. Mouth. That's in RP and in Northern English. However, in general Southern English, they say math. Math. So that's an example when Southern English is not in line with RP. So it's a little bit more complicated than that. But anyway, RP is the standard, and it means received pronunciation. So everybody aims for the standard. Sometimes Northern is more like the standard. Sometimes Southern is more like the standard. Another example is with water, where RP actually says the T in the middle, and Northern English also says it. But in the South, as we know, they glottalize T's even in the middle. So whereas everyone glottalizes T's at the end, the Southerners actually glottalize T's even in the middle. Water. Water. schedule and schedule are both acceptable pronunciations. Schedule, schedule. How do you pronounce respite and despite? Do you pronounce respite, despite? Respite? Respite? No, it's respite. Respite. They've given us a respite. Despite. Respite. Mina says, Rich, we must have an accent when we speak English. You must have an accent when you speak anything. Accents are simply variations in pronunciation. That's all they are. And although every language may or may not have a standard, nobody speaks the language the same. So we have a standard, and the standard is something we aim for. But of course, everyone has an accent. Mina, think of it like this, okay? Think of it like this, right? So this is Zinedine Zidane playing football, right? Now, we might say Zidane plays football, or he did play football very, very well. And, you know, it would be great for everyone to play football just like Zidane. But actually, that's impossible. Nobody plays football like Zidane, okay? Lionel Messi does not play football like Zidane. Lionel Messi also plays football very well, and some of the things that Lionel Messi does are similar to what Zidane does, but they're not identical. And that's very much like accents, or your accent, for example, or my accent, is that we all play football a little differently. And we can look at Zidane and go, oh yes, I want to play football like Zidane. And we can aim for that, and that's good. It's useful for us as football players to aim for Zidane. However, we also accept that we have our own style. And maybe people will like that style also. They'll say, oh, Rich plays football like Zidane, but also he plays football a bit differently than Zidane, and I like that. Do you see what I mean? So nobody speaks to a perfect standard. There are always variants. However, it is useful to have a standard. In English, that standard is RP. But do accept that you will have some sort of accent. And although we can come up with examples of people who speak RP, even they sound different, right? Like if I play a recording of Patrick Stewart. Let's have a recording of Patrick Stewart.
I thought everything was over.
Okay.
Especially, you know, one aspect of my life.
Ladies.
Finished.
Was it?
Nobody's going to want. Was it over?
Yeah, and that time, not later. I know it wasn't later, but was it?
Yourself, no more hiding. And he was right, because he cut it all off. And then George, he worked his way out, still holding me. He came around and he knelt down in front of me and he said, "Now you be yourself, no more hiding." And he was.
So Patrick Stewart has a very nice RP accent, but he also has quite a distinct way of speaking. There's definitely an accent there, right?
He came around and he knelt down in front of me and he said, "Now you be yourself, no more hiding." And he was.
Do you hear that? So that's an example of RP. But whenever I hear Patrick Stewart's voice, I 100% know it's Patrick Stewart immediately, which means he obviously has an accent because I can hear his voice like that. You know, he's so identifiable. And if he was speaking perfect RP, then he would sound the same as everyone else who speaks RP, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, for example. There's also an example of someone who speaks RP, allegedly.
I'm not concerned about the racial makeup of the country. I am concerned about the borders issue and the number of people coming in.
So
I'm interested in tolerance and allowing people to get on with their lives and think what they like and do what they like within the law.
So that's another example of a guy who supposedly talks with RP. But they both sound quite different. And I'm sure if I examine their language, I will find phonological differences in how they speak. How to not use mobile phone too much. Pallavi, just start leaving it places. That's what I do. I don't like having it in my pocket because it's kind of cumbersome. Like I don't have it in my pocket right now, actually. So just start leaving it on your desk. Leave it by your bed. Just get into the habit of leaving it places and you'll start to become more comfortable with not using it. It's really nice, actually, to not use your mobile phone. So, folks, here's our current homework assignment. Our homework is for Saturday, and it's about last class. And the homework is to talk about a moral dilemma or question, such as those from Saturday's class. That's the last class. Record a short audio and send it to me on our chat server. You can join our chat server there. The link to join our chat server is there. That's a Discord chat server. And if you'd like to download the notes from today, you can download the notes from today. They are available there. Last chance now for any questions. Can you explain the homework one more time? Okay, yes. Right, so the homework says, talk about a moral dilemma or question. All right? So what am I going to do for my homework? Okay, so first, I need a moral dilemma or question. So let's consider something like... smoking should be banned in all public places. Okay? So this, we could call this a moral question. Now, I want you to talk about that. So, what do you think about that? Do you think it is morally correct? Right? Is this ethical? Why or why not? So, what you would need to do, Pallavi, is make some notes. As I said before, make some brief notes about it. So what things might I consider about it? I might consider two sides. I might say ethical because prevents illness, smoking addictive and damaging, and harms the smoker, other people, harms smokers' family if they die, etc. Okay. And then I might also say the other side of the argument, that it's a bit unethical. And why is it unethical? Well, Unethical. Controls behavior, limits freedom, punishes people with addiction. People with addiction, normally poor people, okay, etc., etc. So we consider, why might it be ethical? Why might it be unethical? What do we think about that situation? And then you record yourself talking about those notes for 2 minutes and then send it to me on the Discord server. So that's one possibility. We could take a completely different ethical dilemma. Pallavi, we could talk about this situation. Should he pull the lever? And we have a number of classic situations, classic ethical dilemmas from the internet. You can find these on the internet. So situations like that, where if I pull the lever, then I am a murderer. And if I don't pull the lever, then 5 people will die. So that's a situation. You can also get rather amusing variants on this situation, like this. Quite an interesting situation. And this can get quite complicated, where we're talking about whether you should pull the lever for 5 people to have to pull the lever, or pull the lever so 1 person has to pull the lever. Yeah. Anyway, kind of fun. No, I encourage questions, Pallavi, and I welcome your questions. I am absolutely happy to explain the homework. It's perfectly okay. I might, if I get frustrated about it, that's my problem. I shouldn't get frustrated about it. As a teacher, we have to be as patient as we possibly can. So actually, I'm really, really happy that you asked the question. So thank you very much for asking the question. And please, in future, if there's anything you don't understand, ask the question. It gives me something to respond to and something to talk about. And honestly, I appreciate it a lot. So don't worry about that at all, Pallavi. I think it's very good to ask questions. And I think it helps everyone. It certainly helps me. You know, so if you detect any frustration, then that is not a problem with you. That's a problem with me. Because, you know, as a teacher, patience really is a very important quality to have. And, you know, as a teacher, we're always super familiar with the thing that we're explaining. So it's quite natural that we could get frustration when explaining anything, because obviously as a teacher, we have to be very familiar with the subject already. So everything we're explaining really should be like 1 + 1, easy stuff. So of course, it's natural to get frustrated. But, you know, as a teacher, you have to cultivate patience and understanding. That's the whole point of being a teacher, isn't it? So, yeah, don't worry about it, Pallavi. I appreciate the questions. I hope that my answers are good. That's the important part, isn't it? Pachu says, professors at university give this kind of situation, right? I think they used to, Pachu, but now it's become more of an internet discussion, actually. It's like a very archetypal or very stereotypical internet ethics discussion. So when I studied philosophy in 2001, I never saw any of these situations, actually. And I did study ethics. I studied ethics. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I've never seen these in university, but maybe some university professors do give them. What are you planning for the next lesson, Rich? Philosophy topic or something else? I definitely want to complete Philosophy 101, Sleepwalker, but I don't know if I'm going to do that for the next class or not. So let me tell you guys what I have planned in terms of philosophy, and, you know, you can tell me what you'd like to do next class. Maybe you'd like a break from philosophy. So basically, with our philosophy mini-series, we've covered aesthetics. Let's use the simple words. We've covered beauty. We've covered goodness or ethics. And we've covered knowledge. So what do we have left to cover? We've got politics, metaphysics, the mind. That is the philosophy of mind. So it's like identity, etc. Science, because there is the philosophy of science. We have logic. You might be quite interested in logic because we can talk about logical fallacies and things like that. Religion, existentialism, which I hate, so I don't think we're actually going to do existentialism because it's nonsense. And then modern philosophy. Yeah, that's more or less it. So that is basically that's the outline of a first year introduction to philosophy course at university or at A level. So we've done beauty, we've done good, and knowledge. And we have the others to do. I'm not saying that I will do all of them, by the way, but I'm just saying I could do all of them. But I don't know if I will do all of them. We'll see. I'm not going to do existentialism. It sucks. Where is math? I don't know what philosophy of maths would be. Philosophy of maths. What is philosophy of maths? Philosophy of maths would come probably under logic and maybe a little bit under metaphysics. Should we do a whole series of this? I don't know, Mina. I don't know. I might stop for a while and then come back to it. Can you do a class for phrases of expression for speaking and writing? Yeah, I've done loads of that stuff, Pachu. If you have a look at on the channel, we've done loads of classes of that. But yeah, we can totally do that. How do we send the homework, says Pure Care? Yeah, you send the homework directly to me, Pure Care, and you do that on our Discord server. So you send it directly to me on our Discord server. You can join our Discord server for free using that link, EngLearnChat. And then go on there, message me. My name is ProfesorRich or ProfRich or something. And just send me the audio. I don't know. I might take a break. I'm feeling a little bit tired from all of the philosophy. And I am aware that it's pretty difficult. I mean, it's even more difficult when you're learning another language and you try to do something like this. Now, it's justifiable because it's interesting as well. So it's like, oh, it's interesting, but I know it's difficult. Maybe we need a break. Maybe we need to do like animals or something on Saturday. And then we'll come back to philosophy. I'd quite like to do politics. I think that would be fun. Metaphysics, yes, but I think metaphysics will be really difficult. I'm not that interested in philosophy of the mind, actually. Yeah, maybe we don't worry about that one. I'm not really interested in philosophy of science. Logic, yes. Logic would be interesting. Religion, no. As you all know, I am spiritual, but I don't think that philosophy is a particularly useful way to access religion. So, not that interested in philosophy of religion. And modern philosophy we could do. So, actually, there's only 3 left that I really want to do. It's not that many. Yeah, politics might be great. Yeah, I agree. I think politics could be fun. The thing about politics is it could also be dangerous. People can get quite spicy when it comes to politics, you know? Wow, Dreamer wants more poetry. We could do some poetry at some point. We could do some gaming, by the way. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that. Playing some games and talking about things within the games. What is materialism, says Pure Care. Materialism is the idea that everything is material. Oh, materialism. Materialism is the belief system that everything is material. So, in other words, there is no such thing as immaterial things. Nothing exists outside of the physical realm, in other words. Nothing exists outside of the physical, natural world. That's the belief of materialism, essentially. So materialism will basically say, look, you know, the table exists, it's a physical table, I exist, I have a physical body and a brain, and there are some illusions that I have, such as consciousness and perception, but those illusions are just electronic signals in my brain. They are all physical things that exist, and my perception of them is just how the physical things manifest, basically. That's what materialism is. I don't really understand how anyone can truly be a materialist. And especially if you think about it with some fairly basic philosophical inquiry. Just sit down for a while and do some meditation. And before you know it, you can't possibly believe in materialism anymore. They don't believe in the spiritual realm. Well, actually, Shimi, a materialist could believe in the spiritual realm, actually, but paradoxically, a materialist who believes in the spiritual realm would say that the spiritual realm is also material. And obviously, there'd be a lot of problems with that. So, for example, a materialist would try to prove that the soul actually exists somewhere in our body. So they might look at the brain and try to find the soul and try to like track the soul as it exits the body and so on and so on. That's a materialism. Whereas if you're not a materialist, you don't have to prove a physical material soul that exists, because you can refer to immaterial existence. That is, things that exist which have no material component or they have a very small material component. I mean, here's something to think about, right? Here is something to think about. Current scientific theory, by the way, science is generally materialistic. I mean, it has to be. The scientific method only applies to materialistic things. But scientific theory talks about the Big Bang, where we had nothing and everything came into existence. This is the theory of the current scientific theory of the universe, which begs the question, what is nothing in a material sense? In other words, how can nothing exist if you're a materialist? How can nothing be if you are a materialist? How can it be? And if it can't be, if nothing cannot be, then how can there ever be a state of nothing? Anyway, welcome to philosophy, folks. It's one of my favorite subjects. I hope you've enjoyed the stream for today, and I hope this has kept you entertained as well as providing you with some useful English instruction and some useful information about philosophy. If you've enjoyed this video, now would be a fantastic time to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tell any of your friends who want to learn English that this is the place to be. Look down below for the notes from today, as well as a link for joining our Discord server. It's been my pleasure. My name has been ProfesorRich. I will be back on Saturday at 1 p.m. UK time. Thank you very much for joining me, and bye-bye for now. Catch you later. Have a lovely day, folks.